You would think that since Chicago is such a big market town, anything the Cubs do would get nationwide attention. But with the run the Bulls are on, and the Cubbies well on their way to what looks like a second consecutive century without a championship, you may not have noticed Cubs first baseman Anthony Rizzo was quietly putting together a monster fantasy season. Monday, Rizzo extended his hitting streak to 7 games, going 3 for 4 with a home run, 4 RBI, and a walk. Rizzo's average has been creeping up during the streak, and with 20% of the season in the books, the 24-year-old is on pace for 45 home runs, 126 RBIs, and 20 stolen bases. Chicago fans finally have something to cheer about on the north side, and if you're a Rizzo owner, you do too. Now, it was a slow day in Major League Baseball yesterday, but there was one thing in particular to watch, and that was how Clay Buchholz would perform after being accused by Blue Jays radio and TV broadcasters of having a foreign substance on his arm during his last start Wednesday in Toronto. Now, I stated last week that when everyone watching so closely, Buchholz would now have to be on his best behavior Monday, and his start would be a tell on how good he really was. Unfortunately, the results were mixed, only muddying the waters because we weren't really able to conclude much. While he gave up 4 earned runs on 7 hits and 2 walks over 6 innings, suggesting that perhaps he had been up to some shenanigans, he struck out 9 in those 6 innings. Now, if you recall, it was his strikeouts per 9 that had been one of the most noticeable changes in his game, raising eyebrows in the first place. So for me, the jury's still out on whether Buchholz has turned into a legit stud or just another cheating bastard. In short, you're going to have to wait a couple more starts before his true colors are revealed. And how about this? Ubaldo Jimenez has given up just 2 runs over his last 2 outings, spanning 12 2/3, averaging a strikeout per inning, winning both games. That's Ubaldo Jimenez, ladies and gentlemen. Are the brief glimpses of the front end of the rotation guy we saw in Colorado a few years ago back? No, but his recent turnaround is worth mentioning. That, and his name is fun to say, Ubaldo Jimenez. Now, Cubs general manager Jed Hoyer stated yesterday that he's not worried about starter Edwin Jackson. Why should he be? Jackson, who signed a 4-year, $52 million contract in the offseason, is 0-5 with a 6.39 ERA through 7 starts. That's why. Now, here's something interesting. With only 10% of fantasy teams starting him, that means 90% of amateur baseball general manager wannabes playing fantasy baseball have managed to avoid using Jackson, while Hoyer is paying him $52 million to stink up the joint. Jed, you have an open invitation to join my fantasy league. Joel Hanrahan had to leave yesterday's game with a right forearm strain and will undergo an MRI today. So with Andrew Bailey already on the shelf, we'll look to see how manager John Farrell plays this. Dayan Viciedo's return to the White Sox has been delayed a bit as his rehab start was rained out yesterday. He's rehabbing an oblique injury and is expected to need 4 to 5 games before being activated off the DL. Jason Heyward took batting practice for the first time after his appendectomy. He's still more than a week away from returning. Josh Johnson owners will be relieved to know that his MRI came back clean. Hopefully that means that he can be productive when he comes back from the DL instead of throwing up that slop that he's been throwing up there. And finally, Marlins second baseman Donovan Solano is expected to be placed on the 15-day disabled list today with an intercostal issue. I've seen some sites reporting this as an intercoastal issue. Now, that's either a typo that one person made and others are simply scraping it from the internet and repeating it, or no one knows what the hell they're talking about because as far as I know, he has no issues playing on either coast. He's got a problem with his left side. Sammy in Big D wants to know if I like Astros left fielder Chris Carter. Sammy, I do, and I don't. He's got plenty of raw power, there's no doubt. And he's probably worthwhile taking a flyer on if you're in a keeper league. I have him, but I can't play him. Right now, it's just too hard to carry his batting average. Interestingly, with Brett Wallace being sent down to the minors recently, the Astros are now going to start giving Carter time at first base, which was his normal position. If you see that he starts to make contact more regularly, you can plug him in and he'll help you with home runs. But at the moment, he just whiffs too much to have him in your lineup. He does qualify at both first and outfield already. So my advice would be to stash him. Maybe if he figures it out, he could even be useful later on this season. A reliable little birdie shot me a note yesterday letting me know that teams have recently inquired about Chase Utley. Two things here. First, if the Phillies don't start to gain some momentum in the standings soon, expect Utley to be dealt at some point, as he's in the last year of a 7-year, $85 million contract. The second, the fact that teams are inquiring about him means that they think he's healthy enough to help him, which is a good sign if you have Chase Utley on your roster. For RotoExperts, I'm Mike Cardano.